Welcome into PYC. Today, we're going to be talking about the Women's March Madness bracket as it continues to go, and they'll be starting in the Sweet 16. Then we're going to move over to the NFL rule changes that have gone on this past week, and then we're going to close it out with, I think, America's favorite time of the year, and that is opening day, which is tomorrow. So sit back, relax. You're watching PYC. Welcome to PYC. We're going to be talking about the Women's March Madness brackets that have been going on here. We're entered into the Sweet 16 right now, which have teams of South Carolina, Iowa, LSU still fighting for that championship. I'm joined here with our panel here with Ethan Spozarski and Tyler Aaron. How are you guys doing today?
I'm pretty good. Very exciting. I've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Got a lot of stuff to plead. Just want to say with your lead that this is definitely not America's favorite time of the year. I don't know where you got that. I'd like a source information because I know that it's not my favorite time of the year.
I'll go with the Associate Press or something.
The Associate Press? Hey. All right.
It is America's pastime, baseball. It is a fun time of year to watch finally baseball. Being back, and then you got other sports. You know, hockey playoffs are coming up too. So
see, he gets it.
In March Madness too.
You said
all right,
baseball.
All right. We'll get into that later with baseball, but right now we're talking about basketball. So right now we have our Sweet 16 matchups, which we'll go over here. We have South Carolina facing off against Indiana. South Carolina in both of their games have had a deficit of 47 points or more. Then you go on to Oregon State and Notre Dame and Albany 1. Then we move over to Albany 2 with Iowa facing off against Colorado. Iowa coming off of a big win against West Virginia. That game was a lot closer than a lot of people thought. West Virginia had a lot more competition going into that. And then we have LSU facing UCLA, South California versus Baylor, UConn and Duke in Portland 3. And then in Portland 4, we go to Texas and Gonzaga and NC State versus Stanford. Now, out of these Sweet 16 games, Ethan, do we have a top game going into this?
Well, I mean, myself, I had 3 games start away just in the Sweet 16 alone, and all three games were in 3 different sections and regions. I mean, this Iowa-LSU game is a championship rematch that we are so eager to see. Caitlin Clark, I mean, she is just single-handedly taken over just all of women's basketball and probably basketball as a whole. Honestly, the Detroit Pistons should take her first overall in the draft, if I'm being completely frank with you.
I would agree with you on that one.
I mean, Angel Reese as well for LSU on that side really competing. I think that's going to be an exciting game. USC-UConn is very underrated to me. I mean, USC is itself, Juju Watkins and company, they are doing a really good job in that front. And then UConn, a sneaky good team that not a lot of people are looking at as of right now. And finally, Gonzaga, NC State as well. That game really irks my interest as well. NC State on the men's side doing great things for basketball. Gonzaga, the women's side, I mean, they have a very good case. So just those 3 games alone, when I started looking through all these games, really irked my interest.
Yeah, for me, the 2 that really caught out to me was definitely looking down to Notre Dame and Oregon State. Both teams, very similar styles of play. Both ranked in the top 100 in offense in all of the NCAA. Very similar records too. Notre Dame just has a slight edge in record with a 26-6 record over Oregon State's 24-7 record. And they both played against very similar teams. At least I think Notre Dame beating Kent State in the first round, and then Ole Miss just a few nights ago. And then for Oregon State, Eastern Washington and Nebraska as well. And also another one caught my eye too was UConn versus Duke. It's the 3 seed versus a 7 seed. The 1 and 2 seeds are gone now in the Portland 3. And again, they both have very different styles of game. Actually, a UConn and Duke both they're really big defensive teams too as well. So those are the 2 that I think are going to be the best.
Yeah, I would, and you mentioned the rankings there. With the rankings going into this, only 4 upsets happened within the women's bracket over the first 2 rounds that we saw here. Baylor was one of them, Baylor being the number 5 seed, won over against South California just this past round, which is something that we see normally within the men's tournament where we see a lot more of upsets going on. And in the women's, we don't see it as much, especially with South Carolina. That's one team that has gone into this undefeated. Last season, they were undefeated. Do they come up against a barrier at some point through this tournament.
Well, I mean, for USC, I mean, up to this point, they've scored 160 total points, averaging 80 points per game through the first 2 rounds. I think offensively, that is without a question a top-tier offense just in this tournament alone. I mean, Juju Watkins leads her team in 11 categories itself, which I was clicking through all the stats and reading, and it was absolutely mind-blowing to me. But I think the hard part about having a Juju Watkins, an Angel Reese, a Caitlin Clark is kind of takes away from that team aspect or the depth aspect that a team can bring with you here. I mean, it's one of those players, superstar scenarios where they kind of are that front runner for the team. So I think if anything, is if Juju Watkins finds herself in a bit of foul trouble or situationally isn't able to be used properly, that the USC team could be in a bit of trouble with some opponents they could face down the way.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely. I think South Carolina is going to face they might hit their struggle by the Final Four round, maybe even the championship game. This is going to be a good game against Indiana, but again, like you said, South Carolina is second in the entire tournament in offense. You said they average 80-some points a game, and really both of their opponents that they have beaten, they've won over margin of plus 64, to my knowledge. And everyone, almost half of their team is already shooting at the field goal percentage of over 500. So definitely foul trouble. If that gets to them, that's definitely where they're going to struggle. But I don't think that they will struggle to that Final Four round, maybe even championship.
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina, they've been really red hot. You really cannot stop them. But I think that the team stopping them going into this, it's going to be Notre Dame. Notre Dame has been a competitive team the entire season going into this bracket, and I think that Notre Dame eventually, they're going to win against Oregon State. South Carolina, of course, is going to beat off Indiana, and then you're going to have South Carolina, Notre Dame in the Elite Eight. South Carolina is not making it to the Final Four, I'm sorry to say. If they are going to lose, it is going to be against Notre Dame.
Joey.
I get your biased opinion, but
Whoa. What do you mean?
I get your biased opinion.
No. If you have watched Notre Dame at any point throughout the season, which I doubt you have, you would know they are the team. They are going to beat.
Joseph, hold on. Wait, whoa. First of all, I apologize for the games. I got a bit ahead of myself there because I was reading ahead in the bracket, so I first want to apologize for that. But second, to the point of what we were just talking about, I'm sorry. Notre Dame, if they get to the Final Four, will not make the championship game. And South Carolina has won 32 straight games in a row. They are in a place only 9 other teams have done all year and have a chance to finish what only 4 other teams in the entire D1 women's basketball history has ever done. I'm sorry. There's no way in my mind that lines up in any situation. I mean, there's just too much talent going on. I really don't believe. I mean, my Elite Eight doesn't even have Notre Dame in it.
Well,
I'm sorry. It just doesn't.
That's a bad thing.
Listen.
You think you just said South Carolina's going to lose?
No.
South Carolina's literally the best team in basketball right now. In women's basketball, they're
so
the
was
best
the
team.
Patriots, and they got beat by the Giants in the Super Bowl.
I'm telling you.
Yeah,
Listen,
exactly.
There's no denying. I think Notre Dame does beat Oregon State. I think they go to the Elite Eight. South Carolina, I could see an upset. But, I mean, you have Hannah Hidalgo. She's 5th in the tournament right now at 22.9 points per game. 5th in the tournament. They have 3 different players shooting above a .500 and 2 above .600 in field goal percentage. So definitely, I can totally see a Notre Dame upset, but it's going to be a hard contested game though. But no doubt in my mind, it is South Carolina, Notre Dame in the
South Carolina, they're averaging 89.5 points per game. No team touches that. I mean, granted, again, I mentioned USC scores 80 points a game. I'm sorry. There's no way. They have 3 players averaging over 10 points per game. The team's shooting collectively really well together. Did I mention the 32-game win streak heading into the tournament?
Yeah, multiple times.
Then that should be more than enough to help support that Notre Dame is not going to be able to crack that. I'm sorry. They are on a legendary run in this situation.
Well, besides that fact, I have Notre Dame winning the entire championship here. I think once they beat South Carolina is really the only threat that we have.
We. He said we have.
Oh my gosh.
He said we.
Anyways, who would you think is going to win this tournament going ahead?
I mean, I will ride with you on Notre Dame, but they're not beating South Carolina. I'm sorry. I have South Carolina. I do think they go the complete undefeated season. I think they will go out and they'll play Iowa in that championship game. I have an 84-79 final. That's my prediction for that.
High-scoring game, but I like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like that.
Iowa with Caitlin Clark, I mean, you can't go against her, especially how Iowa's played so far in the tournament. And it's just really hard to not root for South Carolina, wanting them to go the complete undefeated season as well.
And Ethan?
Caitlin Clark's shooting almost 30. She's almost scoring 32 points per game. I'm sorry, that's beyond impressive to me. But, I mean, Iowa-LSU was the hardest game for me to decide. I think Iowa wins out just by a hair. Angel Reese is very impressive, but I personally don't think she's at the Caitlin Clark level. My final four, actually, is South Carolina. Gonzaga comes out of Portland. I think they beat NC State there. I think Iowa will beat LSU to get to the Final Four. And then UConn, I think, upsets USC down there. I think UConn is a very underrated team. In fact, I have UConn and South Carolina in the finals. I changed up from when I originally put the first time I did the entire bracket. I just think this UConn team is beyond underrated. They're a sneaky good team. I mean, they have 4 players average 10-plus points per game. Their point margin throughout this first 2 rounds of the tournament are plus 15. They're just doing really well offensively. I just think as a whole right now, whenever you have a team as a whole playing together is their best basketball and girls that want to win championships, that's going to eclipse through here. I have South Carolina beating UConn in the finals. I think they do go all the way and they join elite company. But with Baylor, another UConn team in the past, Tennessee and Texas as the only teams to ever go undefeated from beginning to end, including the tournament.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to find out on April 7th in Cleveland when the national championship for the women's bracket goes on. But don't go anywhere. We'll be back talking about the NFL kickoff changes and some different bans that they've put on different rules. We'll be back.
Sports information and athletic communication majors here at Waynesburg University take on the responsibilities of the pros. As a sports information athletic communication major, you'll take on tasks such as talking to coaches, public address announcing, tracking and spotting live stats, as well as running those stats to the TV and radio announcers and keeping the crowd occupied with the live video board. We have alum currently working for the Washington Wild Things, Akron Rubber Ducks, the Miami Dolphins, and numerous Division I programs. So what are you waiting for? Come here and join us at WU.
Welcome into the NFL segment here. And normally when I would say March Madness, you would think of basketball, right? But in this case, I'm talking March Madness with the NFL. Of course, we've had free agency and stuff, but the newest thing that's coming out of this is that they're changing a lot of the rules going into this coming season. One of the quotes I have here from the NFL website is that of the kickoff change, the shift should reduce the numbers of high-speed collisions that cause injuries. The kicker will continue to kick off from the 35-yard line, but the remaining 10 players of the kicking team will line up at the receiving team's 40-yard line. At least 9 members of the returning team will be between the 35 and the 30-yard lines and what is called the setup zone. So last night I was like, you know what? It's better if I have a diagram. So you know what I did? I got this whiteboard and I made a diagram because I was like, you know what? Why not? So we're going to explain this a little bit for those in the audience and for you guys on the panel here. So we have our end zone, of course. And then we have the landing zone. You can have 2 offensive or receiving team members back there between this landing zone, which is between the 20 up until the end zone. Then you have this just kind of gray area between the 30 and the 20-yard line. And then you have the setup zone for the receiving team of their members between the 35 and the 30. Between the 40 and the 35 is just another dead zone. And then between the 45 and the 40 is the kickoff zone. And then all the way back there at the 35 is where the kicker will kick off per usual. So when looking at this, do you guys think this is crazy? Do you think this is good for the NFL? What do we think?
Joey, first of all, I must commend your effort and artwork. This is a fantastic diagram. I've really liked that we were able to get it on the whiteboard here and not just have it on our papers and have to verbally explain it. And this is no disrespect to your drawing because, again, it is fantastic. I think this might be the dumbest thing that I have ever seen or heard ever in my years of watching NFL football. I'm sorry. First of all, the kicker has to now manage to get it in either the 20 from the 20 to the end or the 20 to right before the end zone to roll in, or if it rolls out, or if it goes over the end zone, which I find absolutely blasphemous, that the receiving team then gets to move out to the 40 if it goes out the back of the end zone and doesn't touch it. It makes no sense to me, and the fact that there's no fair catches anymore. What? That limits everything. High-speed collisions stop if you fair catch the ball. If you fair catch, you can't run into them. That makes no sense. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have to do math or think about anything when I'm watching football. That's absolutely...
You shouldn't have to make a diagram about a kickoff.
That's horrendous. But, again, no disrespect to your drawing because the dedication was put in last night.
Thank you.
You know, I 100% agree with Sparky. I'm sorry. You probably want me to disagree. I think this is the dumbest thing the NFL could have ever come up with. I mean, even when the XFL at the time did this.
Even when Picasso
so
painted
dumb.
this.
like, I get it. You're trying to make the NFL safer. Doing this is not going to make the tackling systems more simpler. I mean, you're going to expect the kicker to kick it in between that little 20-yard zone? No.
Preventing high-speed collisions in football is like preventing people from getting in car crashes. It's just, it's going to happen. It's a part of life, unfortunately. And injuries are just bound to happen. I think just, if anything, it's going to make things a lot more harder on things. And plus, players now going to adjust to this rule and adjust to all the technicalities that come with it. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of penalties or situations on kickoffs where players are going to be forced to adjust. And again, it's something more mentally in that case than anything, but with all the different setup zones, the receiving zones, the end zones, and then the kicker's all by himself on the other side of the field, which that's sad. I'm sorry. Again, this just blows my mind how much detail and focus went into this when, I mean, I just think there's a different way people could be handling this.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think that the biggest thing with this is that I think they're trying to just kind of spice it up a little bit. Kickoffs as of recently have kind of been a little bit dry. At least in my mind, they mainly just go to the 20 or the 30. Every now and then they might get through and have a kick return, but normally that doesn't happen. But also with these kickoff changes, the onside kick, if you now would like to do an onside kick, you're more than happy to. You just have to report it. Just if you would be an eligible receiver, you have to go in and you have to report yourself to the officials.
Like Detroit did.
And the opposing team would then be notified on if you are attempting an onside kick. So no more surprise onside kicks like the one in the 2009 Super Bowl with the Saints and the Colts, where the Saints did that, got the possession, and that won them the game.
Pat McAfee did himself.
So exactly.
The Houston Texans. And that was one of the best kicker moments in recent memory because, I mean, kickers have a lot of duties that you do to get the kickoff, get the right placement. Sometimes the surprise element brings a whole new factor in. That completely goes away now. Yeah. You got to go report it as eligible, kind of like we mentioned with the eligible receivers. But I'm sorry, again, this whole having to think thing is just blowing my mind. You know, when you sit down on a Sunday, the rules are the rules. I get you got to change and update some rules. I like the hip tackle rule. I think that was a great update that the NFL just did, banning the hip tackle, making that a automatic 15-yard penalty. Because a lot of players were getting hurt in that situation. Unfortunately, Logan Wilson, a linebacker for the Bengals, found himself very commonly having this tackle and unfortunately had a few injuries with some other players. So I think in that case, it's definitely going to help everything out, and working to enforce it may be a little bit tricky, but I think that's a situation of a great rule change, this kickoff rule change again.
Yeah, the hip drop tackle was unanimously voted by the NFL owners to be approved in going into next season. And like you said, it will be a 15-yard penalty, and there could result in fines to players depending on how severe the penalty would be. So going into that, do we think, like you said you agree with that. Tyler, do you agree that this is a great rule to be added, that they're banning this tackle? Or do you think it's going to be more difficult for players, coaches, and fans to be paying attention on what's going on?
So I think that the hip band tackle I think it's a good move, but also a bad move because it's showing the NFL is getting soft in a way. And, you know, if I go back and I'm watching clips from the 80s and the 90s, I get it. The game has changed. But then also some of those times people were getting hit like left and right, you know, and they're getting tossed around a million times and stuff. And, you know, they're all fine and stuff. But it's a good move, I think, but it's also going to weaken the NFL. And even going back to the kickoff rule, it's going to weaken too. Like if I'm a new fan and I'm looking at this chart, I'm going to be like, what the heck am I looking at?
Even as as experienced fans, we're still looking at it saying, what the heck am I looking at?
Yeah, and the thing too is fair catching. That's a very strategic part of the NFL today up until this rule change. And it's kind of dumb. I mean, I would 100% get paid $1 million by an NFL team to just stand there and watch the ball go over my head.
I mean, that's going to be pretty hard when you're 6'7", but I mean,
when you're as tall as you are,
I mean, just looking up and just watch the ball go over your head. I mean, you're getting paid money just to stand there and to just let it go over you. So that's why, like, being a kick returner is just fun to watch because you just get to watch the ball go.
Well, speaking of kick returners, the Pittsburgh Steelers did sign Cordell Patterson right after the new kickoff alignment was
like
put into
2
place.
hours after.
Do you think that the Steelers did this because of this new kickoff alignment, or do you think that the Steelers did it mainly because of their tradition of bringing in veteran players to teach their youth, as in Najee Harris and Jalen Warren?
No, they needed a kickoff and punt return. It's that simple. Even if the rule didn't change, who the heck's going to return our punts? I mean, let's just look at the past few. For example, we had Ray McLeod, who returned maybe 1 kickoff in 3 years with the Steelers. Great how that turned out. Let's look Gunnar Olszewski. I mean, in the Steelers' defense, coming into it, he averaged the most return yards per return. But you turned out that, we'll see how great that turned out.
Steven Sims, which did pretty good for us after we got
exactly. And unfortunately, we didn't re-sign him, which again baffles my very small mind. And I mean, then moving on, you got Calvin Austin, who I think has a lot of potential and is a very fast, speedy player. But I mean, Steelers have had one of the least amount of success on special teams in recent memory that I can remember of any NFL team. I mean, granted, now returning kickoffs and punts is not a common deal. It doesn't happen every play. It happens maybe once every 2-3 weeks. It's not a common thing.
But being smart on those.
But being smart is key. And bringing in Cordell Patterson, who has 9 of those touched kickoff returns, I think is a great move. Whether we change the rule or not, the Steelers need to make a move. And again, bringing that veteran presence into the running back room, I'm sure that helps in a sense, and it's a part to sweeten the pot there. But to be honest, we needed to make a move for special teams, whether there was a rule change or not. I thought Steelers did a great job, and I think it's hilarious that it was literally 2 hours after they make the rule change.
I mean, I love the signing too. And immediately when I saw the signing, I was like, okay, this is our new kick and punt returner. Because in our running back room, you have Najee, you have Jalen. That's it. That's all you need. You don't need that third guy like Cordell Patterson being in that role and hurting chances and rushes for both Najee and Jalen. So, I mean, it's great. I mean, we finally have a decent punt kick returner since the departure of Antonio Brown. But, you know, overall I love the move.
Yeah. And then some just other rules that we wanted to touch on just before we go. The teams who now, if they have one of their 2 successful challenges go through, they do get an extra as well. And then the trade deadline has been extended to week 9. But that's going to do it all for our NFL rule changes. Coming up, we're going to be talking about opening day as baseball is rounding the corner.
Welcome to the Eberly Library, where you can find out everything about anything on campus. Through the double doors, you'll enter a world of knowledge and academic resources. These include the Knox Learning Center, where the Disability Services Office and testing centers are located, and the Writing Center, where students can work directly with our tutors in order to hone their essay skills and get easy A's. And now, to the Print Collection, which houses over 75,000 books spanning across all 3 of our floors. And if you're looking for truly a peaceful place to read, we also have the Stover Center for Constitutional Studies, with various nooks and crannies for students to hide away in with a good book. And if you need us to print out something for your next class, head on to the 3rd floor at the Eberly Library.
Opening day is right around the corner. It will be tomorrow or probably today when this is posted, but we're really, really excited to have baseball back. I know that you two are. Whatever. Anyways, going into opening day, of course, tomorrow we have the Rockies versus the Diamondbacks. We have the Cardinals versus the Dodgers, the Giants versus the Padres, the Nationals versus the Reds. The Mets and the Brewers has been postponed. The Pirates versus the Marlins, and then the Braves and the Phillies has been postponed. That was supposed to be the opening day opening game, but that has now since been postponed. The Yankees will play the Astros. Angels will play the Orioles. The Guardians will play the Athletics. The Red Sox will play the Mariners, and the Tigers will face the White Sox. Twins will face the Royals. The Blue Jays will face the Rays, and the Cubs will face the World Series champs, the Rangers. So, going into this season is a lot. There's a lot of stuff that's going on, especially with Shohei Ohtani. As of late, the Dodgers spending a lot of money, and they just made a 10-year deal for, how much was it with Will Smith?
$140 million.
$140 million. They are just finding money. I hope that they found a tree, and if they did, I want it because, of course, we all love money.
LA has they have the best cap space. They have the best areas to work with money in any region, in any sport. Like LA and California as a whole, they are just built different for money. This move doesn't shock me. I mean, you're paying Shohei $700 million. I'm sure that deal, like Patrick Mahomes, $500 million deal, is going to work out itself towards like what everything works out for. But as of right now, I mean, you're paying two players on your team a total of $842 million over a 10-year span. I'm sorry. I'll probably never make that much money in a lifetime. But continue. I apologize.
I mean, it's not just the Dodgers, though. It's all these big market teams buying and just finding all this kind of money to spend. And that's why I think there needs to be a salary cap and a salary cap floor.
Oh, boy.
Make owners spend a certain amount of money and then cap it all off.
You're calling out Bob Nutting, aren't you?
So you can make the
Nutting.
MLB competitive, because it sucks seeing the New York Yankees and the Dodgers do well for the past 150 years versus the
really mad.
Oakland Athletics, who have had literally nothing.
You know what? I can get on that because I'm sorry. If you're the Yankees and the Dodgers, I mean, how do you sign Juan Soto? I mean, out of nowhere, spend all that money on him, including Aaron Judge and that, Shohei, Will Smith, Mookie Betts, Mark Freeman, and then, there's the Pirates. We got Rowdy Tellez. Yeah, that's what I thought. No claps. No, seriously. This is absolutely ridiculous. I'm all in for a floor. I don't know how a cap's going to work out because I don't know if that's ever going to be put in, but I would love nothing more than a floor. How do you build a house? You get a floor. I think that's a base is where you need to start from, and that would go a long way.
Well, speaking of a floor, we're going to be starting with a fresh floor coming up tomorrow. So from Baseball Prospects, I have these two little graphics that have been made, and they are just kind of the rankings that they think that the divisions are going to go into. So what I want to do is we're just going to go through the East, Central, and West for the NL and AL. We'll say if we agree, disagree with what they're saying. So we're going to start off with the National League. We're going to go over to the East with the Braves. Right now they have the Braves sitting atop the East with 101 wins and 61 losses. They have the Phillies next at 85 wins and 77 losses. The Mets at 83 wins and 79 losses. The Marlins at 79 wins and 83 losses. And then the Nationals at 58 wins and 104 losses. What do we think?
I like the Braves at the top of that that NL East there. I think it just makes sense. The Braves really didn't lose anybody significant. They have a lot of the squad coming back. I mean, Ronald Acuna Jr., I mean, you got Austin Riley, Sean Murphy, Ozzie Albies. I think also having Spencer Strider and Max Fried in that rotation really goes a long way for that team. I don't know why they'd go down. I mean, they won 104 games last year. Putting them at 101 at the beginning of the year makes sense to me, just in case, something changes. But relatively the same team, I don't see why they wouldn't be at top of it. I personally, I think the Mets, the Phillies, and the Marlins are going to have another three-way duel here. Yeah. I think this is this division in baseball arguably is the best division in all of baseball. I think it has the most area to be most competitive because of the top four teams being legit contenders now for the pennant. I mean, the Marlins, to me, are a team that's overlooked consistently now, starting from last year. I think the Phillies and Mets have always been back and forth with each other. Even with the Braves, too. There have been times where the Braves get knocked out for a little bit of a time span through that first place spot. So overall, I think the alignment looks fair and seems reasonable, but I think this is going to be the most exciting division in baseball this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, too. It's very competitive this year. I actually think it's going to be the Phillies and the Braves both flip-flopping for that division lead heading in all season, but then I do think the Braves are going to pull a way out into the division win. And I think this division is three tiers. I have the Braves and the Phillies on the top, the Marlins and the Mets on the second, and then you have the Nationals here at the bottom. I do think it's going to be the Mets and the Marlins, though, battling that third place spot. But I actually do think it's going to be the Marlins that's going to take that third place spot, and the Mets are going to be in fourth. So that would be the only change that I have to those predictions.
Yeah, I think that the gap between the Braves and the Phillies is probably a little too large for my liking. 101 and 85 losses. The Phillies did get to the World Series, or no, excuse me, they didn't get to the World Series, but they got close. And they were one of the better teams that I saw in the postseason in October. So I think the Phillies, although I think they're going to still have that second, the Braves will still be up top. But I think the gap between that's going to be a little bit bigger. Moving on to the Central, they have the Cardinals winning at 84 wins and 78 losses. And so if you gave me that, you would say the Phillies would win the Central as well, which I find really crazy. But then you go to the Cubs at the second with 81 and 81. Then you have the Reds and the Brewers tied at third with 79 wins and 83 losses. And then you have the Pirates at the bottom at 72 wins and 90 losses. My personal opinion, I think that the Cardinals being atop is kind of crazy. They were not that good of a team last year, and I don't think they're going to have any jump starts to this. I think it's really going to be a battle between the Reds and the Brewers. I'm going to give it to the Brewers over top, but I think the Pirates are going to make a big step, getting up to that like 82, 83 win category, and seeing them kind of excel a little bit more with the bullpen that they've been building.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know why or what St. Louis is doing atop of that division there, especially from what we saw last year. But, I mean, to me, and I don't know where Tyler stands on this, but personally for me, this is a Cincinnati-Chicago ticket to take the division. I think Cincinnati's overlooked here in this division because of, their lack of success in recent memory. But they're building a team down there. Their bullpen got really, really good. I really like what I see.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I do think it's going to be that Cubs and Reds division. But I do have the Reds overtaking them. Their bullpen, it's really good. But then also, I'm looking also at Cincinnati's team, and I'm just seeing so many similarities to where the Pirates are at now. And I'm not saying the Pirates are going to win that division. That is actually one of my hot takes for the MLB season is the Pirates win the NL Central. And I do think the Pirates are one of the most overlooked teams in the MLB. I do think the Pirates are going to give these other teams the run for their money. I do think the Pirates will, though, finish just above 500. I don't think it'll be playoffs for them this year. But I'm going to give it to the Reds just because they have more of their youth up, and we still have some of that veteran presence on that team. But I'd say Cincinnati will take first, Chicago will take second, and Cincinnati Pirates third, maybe. I'm not a fan of how Milwaukee's done with their offseason at all this year, and they got rid of players like Corbin Burns, most notable to that. And I just think this is going to be a season where Milwaukee's really going to struggle this season, and especially if the injury plague hits them this year, it's definitely just going to get all worse from Milwaukee.
I agree. I mean, this Pirates team, too, I mean, now I understand it's silly to say, and I'm sure as the season goes on, this might change. And, I mean, if there's one thing we're used to, it's being let down. But I really do believe this Pirates team will not finish last in this division this year. They seem to finally be putting something together. Now, again, as we know, from last year, we kind of said the same thing, and it looked to be good, and then we started trading pieces away again for really nothing.
Yeah.
But to me, I mean, I think with Paul Skeens eventually being brought up, that's really going to help out. Mitch Keller got that big contract extension. I think that really goes a long way for the Buccos. I mean, I think we have a great roster here. I mean, Andrew McCutcheon's still on the team. I think that's really big for us to note. I think there's some guys on here that have potential to be really, really good and continue to push up. We got a lot like Tamaro Johnson. Now, him showing up, I don't know how credible that is or how that's actually going to happen compared to like Paul Skeens, but I really do believe the Pirates do not finish last in this division this year, and they could put up a near 80-win season again.
Yeah. Going on just a little bit quicker here for the West, we have the Dodgers at top at 101 wins, 61 losses. The Giants at second with 85 wins and 77 losses. The Diamondbacks at 84 wins and 78 losses. Padres at 81 and 81. And the Rockies being the worst team in the MLB, according to Baseball Prospects, is 57 and 105. Just agree, disagree with that? Do we think any big shocks are going to happen within the West here?
Only disagree is that the Rockies. I don't think the Rockies will finish last in the MLB, but overall standing wise, that seems to fit for me.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I do think the Diamondbacks, they just made it to the World Series. I do think they're going to give a run for their money with the Giants. And I actually think that they'll finish in second place in the NL West and steal a wild card spot come the end of the year, and the Giants miss.
I would agree. I think taking the Diamondbacks up to that 2 and putting the Giants below, I think is good. But I think the West is going to be one of the more competitive ones. I think it's going to be the competitive one within the National League. Moving on to the American League, we have the East, in my opinion, the most competitive out of all of MLB right now, the most competitive division that we have. They have the Yankees atop at 92 wins and 70 losses. The Blue Jays at 88 and 74, the Orioles at 87 and 75, the Rays at 87 and 75, and then the Boston Red Sox at 79 and 83. Personal opinion, having the Yankees go from the bottom to the top is kind of crazy, like they did with the Cardinals, but I think it's even more insane with the Yankees here. Just because you've added Juan Soto and a few pitchers does not mean much to me. I think the Orioles have done better in their spring training. You added Corbin Burns to your bullpen. He will be starting for you in opening day. Orioles, I think, going to the number 1, swapping with the Yankees, I think is where I'm looking at this.
I understand that. I think to a weird arrangement, I think this is an Orioles-Yankees division to take this year. Yankees last season, an unfamiliar season to lack of success. Juan Soto, bringing him in, he could be a big bat. He definitely was more of a player in Washington than he was in San Diego. He got walked a lot when he was in San Diego. Wasn't really a lot happening. I don't know. There's something of just about this big move I think could help the Yankees. But and as much as it pains me to say it, and it does pain me to say it because I do really like the Blue Jays. They are one of my favorite teams in the MLB. There's no way that they finish better than the Orioles this year unless every single player on the Orioles gets COVID and forgets how to play baseball. It's just not going to happen. And the fact that the MLB put him, not the MLB, but these standings, that they put him at 87 wins in third after the year they had last year, and getting Corbin Burns kind of makes me laugh. So overall, it's, the bottom 2 I agree, but I would move around that top 3. I think it's pretty interchangeable.
Yeah.
Well, I think the Yankees are one of the most overrated teams in the MLB. I get it. It was a down year last year. But also signing big-name players like Juan Soto, who I really didn't think let's face it, he had a down year last year. And what do I know? He could do a lot better in the most, hitters-friendly ballpark in the MLB, with especially how short that right field porch is. But I just don't see the Yankees winning this division, not with the Baltimore Orioles and the Toronto Blue Jays in that division as well. I mean, I could see the Yankees making the wild card, but I think this is the Orioles division, and it's their division to lose. And I think the Blue Jays, I get it, they lost a few of their players like Matt Chapman.
That hurt them the most.
They just traded Espinal too. So
that hurt them the most.
It definitely hurts them, especially out on the infield, moving on from 2 core infield guys like that. But I think the Orioles and the Blue Jays are your 2 that's going to go to the playoffs in the AL East.
Yeah, going on to the Central here, I think this division is probably the most competitive of the worst teams.
It makes me sad to look at all those 5 teams there.
Yeah,
it's the worst.
It's like
none
how
of
is one
these
those
teams
making
are.
the playoffs?
I think the only team that's really good out of this one is the Twins. They got to the playoffs last year. Congratulations. You're still not super good, and your division is kind of bad. So you kind of just get a shoe-in. I think we can all agree the Twins will probably go into the.
They're the NFC East a few years ago in the NFL. That was just an abysmal year. Yeah. I think that's fair. It's either going to be the Twins or it's the Guardians. I think it's the Twins just of what they've been building. I think the Guardians in a year or 2, I think that's a very fair possibility to change because they got a lot of young talent they've been bringing up. Yeah. But I think this is the Twins division to lose this year.
Yeah.
I have the Guardians winning the division.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I actually don't even have the Twins making the playoffs. But I do have the Guardians winning this division. I just like what they've done in the offseason and how their team is. And I mean, it's playing in such a weak division. I mean, I think they win the division. Also, another one of my hot takes, too, is the Kansas City Royals. I think they're going to make a big jump this year. Not into the playoffs by any means, but I feel like their team has so many similarities to what the Diamondbacks had heading into last year. And look at what they did. They went to the World Series and played the Texas Rangers. So I think the Kansas City Royals have that chance. You know,
They got a gorgeous ballpark.
I think they
yeah,
have that
that
chance solely because
waterfall.
Patrick Mahomes is a minority owner.
yeah.
And Andy Reid's
They
throwing
have
the
that-
first
What's
pitch
this?
out
Patrick
tomorrow.
Mahomes has just been signed by the Royals.
I mean, they have that beautiful ballpark. They're getting ready to build a new one. I'm pretty sure they already broke ground on it. And I think it's all going to be led by Bobby Witt Jr. He's still really young. I think he is going to be one of the finalist candidates for that AL MVP spot. And I mean, I just like how the Royals are structured. So I think they're just going to make a big leap this year.
Yeah, well, going under that Central, the Twins are sitting atop at 90 and 72. The Guardians at 83 and 79. The Tigers at 75 and 87. The Royals at 71 and 91. And then they have the White Sox at the bottom at 66 and 96 wins. Then we move on to the West, where Texas is at the top, of course. But not the Texas Rangers. It's still in Texas. They have the Houston Astros atop there at 95 and 67 wins. And then they have a large gap between them and the Rangers at 86 and 76 wins, which I find absurd, especially going with this past season's World Series champions. Then you go to the Mariners, who are 84 and 78, the Angels at 73 and 89, and then you go to the Athletics at 64 and 98. Like I said, you're kind of taking out everything that the Rangers did last year. Granted, their team has changed a bit, especially in the bullpen area. But I think that they have made a lot of surprising turnarounds in that trade deadline last year. And I think coming into this, I think they're going to be doing that same kind of thing, kind of setting low expectations in the beginning of the season, but then getting up there.
I think the Astros arguably are the most hated franchise in the Power 4 leagues. I believe it. I mean, bang your garbage cans. Let's get the signals out here real quick. I'm sorry. There's no way. I mean, the team, they're in a Patriots and Chiefs situation.
Yeah.
If they win any more division titles or any more pennants in the next few years, they are going to eclipse that without a shadow of a doubt. I'm sorry, but
Well, especially after losing your manager.
yeah, I mean, they
retired.
lost.
So you're still putting them atop and you're only having them 5 wins behind 100? Like, really?
I honestly,
It surprises me.
they're giving him a bit of an extra gap there, and I mean, it's just one of those things. First year without, a veteran guy at the helm is definitely going to be a bit of a change for the Astros. I mean, Texas did lose enough people for people like us to think, ooh, I don't know, are the Rangers going to be where they were last year? Or are they the exact same team? They kind of pulled the New Orleans Saints and bought in and went all in on some of those guys, bring them in for a year deal, and now you see where they are here. But I mean, why sleep on the Mariners? Honestly, last year, they just weren't able to finish off at the very end. I think the Mariners have a very good chance to make it into the playoffs in the wild card position and maybe even second place in the division. Again, we haven't even started play yet. I'm sure when this episode gets out that we're just getting started with everything. But when we're recording now, a day ahead, I really do believe the Mariners have a fair push. I mean, Julio Rodriguez, he's a very good ball player. I mean, the Mariners did lose a few key people like Eugenio Suarez. I think he was a big piece there. But I think the Mariners have enough of a team and enough of a support system put together that they could make a little bit of a push here.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. All 3 of those top 3 teams are all going to have an equal amount of chance, I think, to win that division. How competitive it was heading into the end of last season, how close each of them. I think all 3 will make it into the playoffs. I have the Astros winning this division just because they always head into September on a hot streak and they always stay hot through September. So I think easily with all 3 of these teams, it's going to be within 5 games of each other, I think. And the Angels in 4th, that's perfect for them. I mean, with the Angels, I don't like anything about the Angels right now, and the only reason why they're not being put in last place in my predictions is because it's the Oakland Athletics are there. That's the only reason why the Angels are staying in 4th.
There's no question. The Angels, you got big fish Mike Trout, who's 32 home runs away from 400. If he was more healthy and had a support system, I'm sure that's a completely different conversation, but that's not reality. Angels, to me, didn't really make any big moves, any big offsetting moments that are going to have me go, hey, they're contenders. They're not. It's just an unfortunate truth. And that goes for the same with the A's and the Rockies. I didn't really see anything that was too serious that's going to have my mind melted. A lot of their big prospects that they've been able to get recently still are not going to be merely making a push here. So I think that's a completely fair statement.
Yeah. I think it's time to move on from Mike Trout. I hate to say it for all Angels fans out there. Sorry, Klingon. But I think it's time for them to move on from such a star player who's done so much for that organization.
Right.
And It would definitely be a shock to see him go, obviously, but I think it's time for them to hit that rebuild process now. They've really struggled, even having two of the best players in the MLB on their team, and they still struggled so bad in that aspect. So I think it's time.
I think trading Shohei was like whenever Tom Brady signed with the Bucks. It's a bit of a move. It's like, ooh, he's in that jersey. I don't know how I feel about that. Then we'll get in the swing of things. But Mike Trout, step 1, get healthy. Step 2, get him out.
Yeah.
Yep. Let him go to another big market team, because that seems how the MLB rolls these days. So,
real quick, give me your NL MVP, your AL MVP, and your World Series champ right before we started off at opening day.
Look at that hot take. Like, we're starting super hot. Like, this is like, we haven't even played baseball yet. We even broke ground on the new season. We're doing this, and I love it. For the American League, give me the bold. This is a hot take in itself. Give me Juan Soto. He's going to turn it around for the Yanks. Also, the American League is just so lackluster compared to the NL, in my opinion. I don't really know too many other players that could put up such a fight there. In the NL, I think it's a three-way. There's about 3 guys or 2 guys in one team that anyone could win in. Give me Ronald Acuna, Ellie De La Cruz, I think it could put up there, or just anybody on the Dodgers. I think that team's so loaded with superstars that there could be anyone but between Shohei, Freddie, Mookie. I think that's a fair statement. If you ask me for a World Series winner, I don't think I could give you one right now. If we're going strictly off what happened this offseason, if it's not the Dodgers, then they need to fire everyone in that front office. If we're being realistic for a minute here. I mean, they brought in everyone under God's green earth and spent literally $2.1 billion on players, not including Will Smith's big contract he just signed today. So I think if it's not the Dodgers, then we need to be reconsidering things. But I do think it'll be an NL team this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to make it really short and sweet here. NL MVP, Ronald Acuna Jr., no doubt, in my mind. AL MVP, Julio Rodriguez. I could see Bobby Witt Jr. making a run, maybe even Gunnar Henderson also making a run. Vlad will definitely be in that conversation too. I mean, also Aaron Judge. I mean, come on. Juan Soto, no. I don't think he's even a top 5 finalist.
We'll just have to wait and see, Mr. Tyler. And let me tell you what, brother.
And
you just have to wait and see.
World Series, I know it's hard right now, but based just off what I think heading into this season, Braves over Orioles in 6 games.
I would not mind watching that.
Well,
I know a few people in the department who would like watching that.
He's pretty. He's got that down pat. He even gave it in 6 games. He knew.
6
but
games.
If I had to give mine, I'm going Ronald Acuna Jr. as well for the Braves in the NL MVP. For the AL MVP, I couldn't really tell you. I would love to say someone on the Orioles because they're my team. So if I will, I'll say Gunnar. What?
You own them? They're your team? You just buy them?
Yes, they're my team now. Okay.
But
They're for sale.
But if I'm taking a World Series champion, I think the Phillies are the only team from last year's team that has not changed at all. They were a team that was very competitive within the postseason, and they haven't changed much. So I think the Phillies are going to get their win here. But that's going to do it all for us here on Plead Your Case. Thank you very much for listening, and let's watch some baseball.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.